So I've just came through this game. I came into it blind. We played on hard mode. It was recommended to me by the gang who are here with me in the chat just now for the longest of time, probably close to a year. And one thing I do before I get into a video game, when I'm starting to stream it, I check online to see, obviously, if a bunch of people recommend it to me, I go looking to see if it's actually, if the hype actually is accurate. I validate that a little bit before we commit to like 120-hour RPG on stream, right? Like fucking 7 days a week. So I looked online. The reviews for this game are stellar, okay? It's a very... it seems to me like it's a very overlooked franchise. It seems to me like not a lot of people know of this, and I feel like that's a shame, because my kind of brief thoughts on the review as a whole before we get started is that this game is really good. It's not perfect and it's got a lot of flaws that I'm going to talk about later, but did I enjoy this game? Yes. Would I recommend it to JRPG players? Absolutely. Is there a fucking shit ton of effort put into this game? Yes, there is. There's a lot of thought process put in. There's a lot of effort with tons and tons and tons and tons of writing. We'll get to that in a minute. The fact is that this game feels like it's been made with love, and it's also been made by people who play RPGs. That's what it feels like. There's a lot of stuff added to this game, lots and lots of quality of life that changes this from what could be a really bland, annoying RPG to a really fun one. So let's get into it. What did I like the most about Trails of Cold Steel, right? It has to absolutely be, for me, before we get into the characters, the story, the music, or any of that stuff, I have to tell you guys, my favourite part is absolutely the quartz system and the battle mechanics, okay? I don't know if that just makes me a nerd. There's a very, very similar system to what feels like the Final Fantasy VII Materia system. I loved being able to attach my quartz, buy my quartz, find the quartz, and then think to myself, oh my god, this is so good on Laura, this is so good on Eustace, this is so good on Gaius, etc., right? And it was such a fun system to play about with, and if you're someone who likes that, if you've got a lot of time for these kind of things and you like min-maxing your team, this game is great at that. So that's the absolute favourite. That's my favourite thing about it. I do also feel and want to point out that the HUD that's attached to that, selecting your characters, changing all your magic, equipping items, for the most part, is really, really good. It's really clean. The way that the health's laid out, the way that you can use spells outside of combat. There's a lot of RPGs that have tons and tons of mechanics in them, and it gets a bit cluttered when you're trying to find things in the menus, when you're trying to like rearrange your party, when you're trying to adjust things. It can get cluttered. This game does it fantastically. So butter smooth, never a problem. Everything's super intuitive to learn in the beginning, and that's really exciting. But the characters were fairly likable. There was some that I liked more than others. They all feel like they've got kind of unique characteristics. There is a lot of regular anime tropes in there. You've got your tsundere characters. You've got your quiet petite friend like Elliot. And then obviously you've got all your hotties. Some of them are from noble households. And then some of them are just clever. Some of them are like, getting into the university or the military school on a scholarship. So for me, that wasn't personally a big deal. But I did like picking my favourite team, getting to know certain characters. And then because of that, bringing them into my team a little bit more. So that was kind of fun. The story itself is obviously long. They add in, I would maybe say it's sometimes too many characters, there's too many NPCs. Some people might not enjoy this story because it's very political. There's a lot of dialogue, and there's a lot of on-screen discussions about political movements that are happening off-screen. You don't get to see some of the things that they're talking about when factions are getting kind of dicey with each other on the border. At first, for me, the story was a little bit kind of convoluted at times because there's so many parties involved. It's kind of like when you're watching Season 1 of Game of Thrones. But I have no doubt in my mind that if you were to replay the game or get into Trails maybe 2 and 3, and you get a bit more familiar with the houses and the factions and the governments and the countries and the bordering nations, when that all comes together, it feels like it could be really satisfying to kind of dig your teeth into. Again, there's a ton of effort put in to writing all of this stuff and crafting it together in the world. And so that needs to be commended. If you like it and you dig it and you get your teeth into it early, you're going to have a fucking shit ton of stuff to uncover when you play this game. It just comes down to whether you're invested or not. If you're just skipping through all the dialogue, as I know for a fact a lot of players will, all of this is going to gloss over you. Your eyes are going to roll into your head every time they start talking. You're going to think, Jesus Christ, please let it end. And you're going to skip it. But again, to counter this, luckily, there's a turbo function, again, quality of life aspect that I know these people have played RPGs. They've sat through long waffling storylines, and they have given you the tools. If you're a player that wants to skip, you can hold circle and skip all the dialogue. You can turbo mode the dialogue if it's annoying you. Turbo mode the cutscenes even, which is ridiculous. And then if you are the opposite and you enjoy the story, you enjoy the immersion, and you really like the characters and the world and everything that's going on with the plot, if you're soaking it all in, you can sit there for hours and just listen to the characters talk, read all the stuff. I do wish more of the game had been a little bit more voice acted, but again, I just feel like that's when you have fucking millions of pages of people talking to each other, sometimes about random shit, you can't voice act the entire game. It would cost too much money and they would lose billions crafting that kind of shit. But maybe the voice acting gets more in depth in the future games. Just if you're expecting the whole thing to be voiced, obviously it's not like that, so be prepared. I'm going to talk about very briefly some of the things that were maybe a bit kind of meh about the game. Most importantly, and again, this comes from a place of love, so if you guys are loving this and you have made it to this point of the review and you're about to get upset when I kind of criticize the game a little bit, just understand that the game is good and this wouldn't stop me from recommending it, but these are some of the things I have to point out in terms of the criticism, because we always do that. If we didn't criticize the games, it would be a massive circle jerk, right? So the first thing to point out is that although the graphics aren't bad, they are from the PS Vita. I feel that this game was made on, I think it was released in 2013. I don't know if that was the Western or the Japanese release, but it came out on the Vita first, and then eventually they ported it across to all your other consoles and to the PC, like Steam and stuff. So what you're going to get if you pick up this game today in, like, let's say 2021, 2022 or beyond, the graphics are a little bit kind of meh at times. The PS4 does well though with it. I never had any crashes. We played it for a long time. No crashes. There's a couple of instances where the frame rate shudders, but honestly it's like 5 minutes over the course of, hundreds of hours. So you don't really have to worry about performance. Just know that the graphics aren't that amazing. Some people said to me, oh Jack, I really like the graphics, and I can appreciate that, right? There's a charm to this, but this game is, the graphics are definitely dated. If you look at modern titles and what gaming hardware can do now, obviously it's not as excellent as maybe it could be. Again, RPGs like this, obviously a lot of players don't buy it for stellar graphics, and to some people it's not even a problem. Totally fine, but I'm just letting you know. If you're someone who comes in as a casual fan and you have no idea whether you're going to like this or not, something to consider. The game looks a bit kind of pish at times. It looks like a bit of moldy cardboard. At times it does feel similarly to the Persona series. I feel like there's a lot of waffling that goes on in these games sometimes. When you have your whole class, which at one point I think goes up to like 11 members or so, 12 members or something. When you're sitting in a group with Reen and they're all talking about something, because the game is trying to give each character in the group a bit of value for people who are fans of that character. Let's say you're a Eustace fanboy or you're a Gaius fanboy. If Gaius and Eustace didn't get any lines, you'd be kind of upset about it. You'd be like, oh man, why do they always leave out Gaius? Gaius is so underloved in the series. He's so overlooked. So what the game does is it tries to give each character a voice line. And what this means is when the characters are discussing something, you can have a point, there's a point made about, okay, here's the bad guys, we're going to this location, be careful of this. But what happens is it's spewed out because every single character needs to respond. And on one hand, it can be nice because, again, it's fleshing out the characters. On the other hand, I feel like it does artificially lengthen the game to a point where sometimes it's almost unbearable. So again, if you're okay with that and you enjoy that kind of comfort, it's going to be great. And if not, then you're gonna be a bit kind of fatigued. I really feel like these kind of RPGs could do with an editor sometimes. I know they're obviously heavily edited, but they could definitely cut out a lot of stuff. Just sentences sometimes, just interactions. Sometimes when you are doing a job, the job is literally go from A to B, but instead your character will go to different locations to get to B and talk to random people, even when it's not a main quest or a side quest, right? And that's a bit kind of like, why did you even make the players do this? A part of me, one of the examples I can give off the top of my head is like when you're going to one of your school trips, every time you leave the campus, there's this weird interaction where they make you go up and buy tickets from the ticket office. And it's kind of cute in a way because you're feeling like, oh, I'm actually going on this journey. I'm going to buy my tickets. You see everything as part of the journey. But then at the same time, I'm like, why is that necessary? I mean, the game's already long enough. If they had actually not cut corners, but if they had rounded out these kind of areas and just removed them completely, your gameplay would be exactly the same, but it would be a couple hours shorter, maybe even just make certain segments a little bit smoother, and again, keep the pacing flowing, because that's something that these games can lose out on. There are fantastic RPGs out there that I know for a fact certain players are going to trip over in the first hour and never see the brilliance of the game, and it's because the beginning is so stodgy. It's because some of the dialogue is just so unnecessary that a lot of people will just immediately turn off, and it's a shame because then they miss out. But that's a discussion for another time. Again, some people will love all the details. Sometimes I feel like it's unnecessary. But one thing I do want to quickly point out, and again, it's similar to the graphics, and this is a bit of another kind of mild criticism, totally not important, but for the most part, one thing I do think that they could have improved upon, and I hope it's improved upon in the future Trails games, is the interaction with the random monsters and mobs when you're out in the world in the dungeons. This whole running up behind the enemy and attacking the enemy in the back with your sword felt a bit janky at some points. The fact that you can walk up behind a monster when it's in the field, and as soon as you get close, the monster just 180 whips around. I feel like this is just a sign of the times and when the game was made, you know. And again, for the platform it was made, which was ultimately the Vita. I just hope that that's improved upon, because that to me was something that kind of bothered me, and you know, I hope that it's fixed. Quickly, this is one last kind of final point that I'm going to bring up, and it's to do with the fighting and the bosses. I would recommend that you play this game on hard if you're just getting started, because hard mode does feel like a difficulty spike at times against certain bosses, but for the most part it feels most of the time fair and challenging. The only thing I would say is, with the exception of some of the final bosses in the game, right, I feel like your S-craft skills that you can have on all your characters is a little bit broken. And I know a lot of people might disagree with this, but just try and hear me out, because maybe this is more of a, not like a strong assertive opinion that I'm going to give, maybe just the introduction to discussion, and you guys can maybe convince me otherwise. But I do feel like the S plus skills, when you get them in the game, it does slightly make the game a little bit easier. And if you want to as a player, you can definitely cheese a lot of this game with just having 200 CP at the start of the fight, S break, S break, S break, S break. And the reason I've got a problem with that is because, you know, some people could say, well, Jack, if you think the S breaks are too strong, just don't use them. But then my answer would be, you know, I want to use them, right? A lot of players will want to use the S breaks. It's your most powerful move. It's your flashy signature move. It's unique to each character. They all do something epic. They all have different ranges and different capabilities. You want to use your S-craft skills. I felt that sometimes it broke the fights a little bit. And in the early phases of the game, I found it a bit more challenging. One, because I was learning the game, but two, because you don't have access to S-crafts. So when you're in a boss fight, you have your characters, their levels, their stats, your items, and that's it. You have to beat the boss fights with the tactics you have built and have been assigned for that group. You know, if you've got like Reen, Laura, Fee, and Eustace or whatever, then that's your team. You got to deal with it. When you start getting the limit breaks, I feel like it makes the game a bit easier, because what you can do is just fully charge your CP and go in and smash the. Like another point, this game is huge, by the way, so I have so much to talk about, but I hope you guys don't mind. I'm nearly finished. One thing I really love that I've just thought about is the XP system and how you get rewarded for doing a fight well. Good players who are tactical and smart will gain XP much faster than players who are just like button mashing. You know, arguably, if you can get through a fight and you just, you know, everybody gets hit, Laura gets punched. You then use your limit break and kill it. You know, you maybe get like 1.2, 1.3 XP. Someone who actually tries to get the unscathed bonus maybe tries to synergize with their teammates a little bit, use certain abilities to kill enemies at once, make sure you're getting the overkills. You can finish some fights with like 2.3.5 XP sometimes, and to be rewarded for being clever is great. And I've never seen that done so well in an RPG before. I would be so bold as to say it was actually a great system, and I hope that other games look into this and maybe adopt it. Felt really rewarding. And when you don't get good XP, let's say you beat a fight and there's like 8 dogs, and you get like, it's a really messy fight, you fuck it up, you do a wrong turn, and you're like, okay, you can see where you went wrong. You know, when the fight ends and you get like 1.2, 1.1 XP, it feels deserved, at least to me. Sometimes you send Reen in for the final blow for the unscathed bonus, and then he misses the last enemy. He just misses his sword, and then the enemy counterattacks and fucking riddles your unscathed bonus. That happens to everyone, right? That's going to happen from time to time, but for the most part, I felt like that was a great system. I'm rambling and rambling and rambling. There's a whole bunch of different stuff we can talk about. If you guys have things you want to talk about in the comments, or points you want to bring up, maybe some things you disagreed on with me about the game as well, then by all means, please leave them and let me know. But for the most part, there's so much stuff I could talk about. This game is so big. There's so many characters. There's so much going on with the plot, and there's so many unique RPG elements that there's so much to talk about. This is going to be one of our longest rants, quick reviews yet, making it not so quick. But yeah, that's my thoughts. I'll leave it here and wrap it up, or it's going to go on forever and ever. But yeah, Trails of Cold Steel 1. Am I excited to play another Trails of Cold Steel game? Yes. Did I enjoy the game more than I thought I was going to? Yes. Would I recommend it? Yes, if you're a JRPG fan. Am I ready to dive into another 120 hours of that right away? No, we absolutely need a break, but that's not to put a dampener on the game, because honestly, I think this is going to be a good cozy stream game for us to play in the future, a good cozy stream series, and I'm excited. So yeah, that's all my thoughts. You'll be pleased to know I'm finished, guys. We're done.